talking points, as far as I'm concerned, from the Chinese Grand Prix 2019, round 3 of the Formula 1 World Championship, race 1000 in the World Drivers' Championship. So let's talk about that to begin with, because there's been an awful lot about whether it is the 1000th race in Formula 1, and of course it isn't, because some of the races, the first from 1950 onwards, the Indy 500 counted towards the World Championship, the World Drivers' Championship, for the first 11 years of its existence. And of course there were races in the World Drivers' Championship where Formula 2 machinery was actually quicker, and some of the World Championship races were won by Formula 2 cars, and therefore the drivers got those points. So it's a little bit of a difficult thing to measure exactly when is the 1000th race, and you know, people have got into the habit of saying Formula 1 began in 1950, which is true, and therefore that the Formula 1 World Championship began in 1950. That's not true, because it wasn't the Formula 1 World Championship at that stage, it was the World Drivers' Championship. Technically, if you really want to get very pedantic, the Formula 1 World Championship began in 1980. So you could count from then if you really want to. Anyway, it's the 1000th race today in the World Drivers' Championship. Other World Drivers' Championships are around as well, so it gets even more complicated if you want to look at sports cars or rallying, or I think that might be it. So it's not necessarily easy to measure. Anyway, we've had it, and it was a race that was really a strategy race, if anything, rather than a wheel-to-wheel exhilarating race. And really that was a race won by Lewis Hamilton at the start. Although, before we get into just talking about Mercedes' dominance, because they've won all 3 races now this season, not only have they won all 3 races, but they've been second in all 3 as well, and that's the first time this has happened since 1992, Nigel Mansell's championship winning year with the Williams team, with Riccardo Patrese backing him up in the results. So it's amazing, it's the first time that's happened since 1992, so it looks like Mercedes are dominating, but this was incredibly close still. In terms of time, Ferrari aren't really that far away. And on Friday, people were talking about the race pace of the Ferraris actually being really good, and perhaps the race would be different once qualifying came in. So I think there are going to be tracks where Ferrari are slightly better than Mercedes. I have a feeling that over the course of the year, I've thought this from the beginning, from even before the season started, even looking at the testing pace, that I thought Mercedes would edge it over the course of the year, because things don't stay still, and that team just seems to be so methodical and so on it. I can't imagine anybody other than Lewis Hamilton winning this championship. But Ferrari aren't really that far behind. Some interesting strategy decisions, so let's move on to looking at Ferrari specifically. So I think, you know, once the start had happened and Mercedes were able to kind of control the pace, it then came about, could Ferrari challenge Mercedes? Is it going to be possible for them to edge closer? And it was clear in the early stages that Vettel was being held up by Leclerc. And I think it was right that Ferrari took the decision to move Leclerc over and let Vettel try to have a go at the Mercedes. It proved to be a bad choice. But you can't say it was a bad choice because the outcome didn't work out when it looked like he was going to be faster. You still have to make a decision in the moment. And it did look like Seb was going to be able to catch up to Bottas in second. So I think it was the right call to make. Now the problem, of course, is that it's created a second race in a row with huge disappointment for Leclerc, because it didn't simply mean that he went down to fourth place. It meant that he went down the pecking order in terms of when he could do his pit stop. And there was some really good double stacking from Mercedes, incidentally, on the pit stops later on in the race. But in terms of Ferrari, what happened was that Leclerc really lost out, and he was never gonna be able to pick up. And even when he went in later in the race, his second stop was much later than everybody else's. I kind of thought, are they going to go on to softs? And they went on to mediums, but the mediums were brand new, and he never really matched the pace that he had earlier. And that's really disappointing for him. But all the same, what would you do if you were in Ferrari's position at the time and it looked like the driver that was behind was going faster? Of course you would want to allow that driver to have a go at the Mercedes. You know, it could be the difference between winning and losing. It didn't work out, but I still think it was the right thing to do, and I still think that Ferrari fans shouldn't be worrying too much yet, because the signs are there that Ferrari will have the pace to win some Grand Prix this year. And what they need to do is, when those Grand Prix come along, is they need to maximise that opportunity. This championship's going to be won by the team that wins on the day when they're the best. And so far, Mercedes have made sure that they've been in that position. I'm not sure that you can tell that the first race of the year could have I think all of the races so far could have gone in different ways, because there are so fine margins between the two top teams. So I don't think it's clear cut. It looks clear cut when you look at the records now, and they'll always look like that: Mercedes 1-2, Mercedes 1-2, Mercedes 1-2. But I think it's closer than it looks, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it develops. I think just my final 2 points are about Alex Albon on the one hand and Pierre Gasly. So Albon started from the pit lane and finished 10th, and he's a driver that I've been watching in, I'm sure a lot of people have been watching in the lower Formula. He's come up this year and into Formula 1, and I think you get drivers that come along and they're so exciting to watch and they're so fast. You think of someone like Max Verstappen, so exciting to watch and just immediately lights things up, and you think, wow, this guy's going somewhere. And then other drivers can get overlooked, and quite rightly Albon was voted driver of the day today. And what's brilliant about his drive is that it doesn't necessarily show one lap pace, it doesn't necessarily show really exciting driving. What it shows is racecraft across a whole race. You start from last and you work your way up into the points, and that's hard work, but you need to be a complete racing driver to do that. And for someone in only their third Grand Prix, that's really impressive. So that's got people are going to be talking about Albon now in ways that they weren't just 2 weekends ago. So it's that kind of thing that people need to be watching out for, and it's quite rare to see it as well. And often we just get really interested in the exciting drivers. I'm not saying that Albon isn't exciting either, because I think he could show that side too. But today was really methodical and professional and impressive in ways that young drivers don't often get the chance to display. And so it's really good, because over the previous two Grand Prix this year, we've kind of been impressed by George Russell and by Lando Norris. They've come to people's attention, and it's been quite obvious. And it's really nice that Albon's been able to come to people's attention as well, because he's clearly got a hell of a lot of talent. And you've got to wonder, where does a driver like him go? Well, there's he's a Red Bull driver. Could he go into the top team? And people are already talking about the position of Pierre Gasly, who, even during the commentary to the race on Sky, Martin Brundle was talking about how Gasly is coming under pressure because he's not lighting things up and getting excited. And then, of course, at the end of the race, he was able to pit for soft tyres and do a very, very quick lap and get the fastest lap point, which I love this rule. I love this rule, because if you've got that gap to the position below you and you can get in the pits and out without losing your position, then you can really go for it. And I think that's fantastic. So instead of one of the championship contenders getting that extra point, it's been taken from them. It's been taken from them by a driver who's way down compared to them, and a driver that can show that they've got some extra points for their team, and can show that they've got the talent under pressure, because you could also really terribly throw it away by doing that strategy as well, taking that call and getting the tyres on at the last few moments. So I thought that was really, really good. I think we haven't seen the most exciting Grand Prix out of the 1,000 World Championship races so far today, but what we have seen is a race full of talking points. This championship might not look close right now, but I think we're going to see some really, really good racing this year. We're 3 races in. We've already seen, the Bahrain Grand Prix was very good, the Australian Grand Prix was very good. Today's wasn't quite so exciting, but the 2 top teams are way closer than the results suggest, and we are going to see some really exciting stuff in the next few races.